what we just did here is the abeng first, after the prayer, calling people together. But you're already inside here, so it still works. All right. So, and the rhythms that I just played, it's a mixture of our own Jamaican rhythm, the Mental Revival, the Brookings, and the Rasta. 4 of them. And that's what we use. It's in the dance hall. I did a little dance hall with right? And it goes on. So, enjoy your lecture, and we will see again. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now you're hearing me. So I should say, good evening. Good evening to you all. And a special good evening to the Cuban ambassador to Jamaica, Ambassador Sanchez, and his secretary, Golando. Welcome, welcome, welcome. To our esteemed and beloved past principal, Dr. Christopher Clark, joining us. To the husband of our guest of honor, Norma Darlington, Mr. David Darlington, and his guest. To the members of the family of the CSMSJ, welcome, good evening, or it is still good afternoon. To our very special guest presenters, Dr. Neville Graham of the Caribbean School of Medical Sciences, and Mrs. Hortense Brown, counseling psychologist. Good to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Shortwood Teachers College family in the house. Welcome to the past students among us. Welcome to those who have joined us on the YouTube platform. It is good to have you joining us for our 32nd Founders Day lecture. It's been 32 years now. We have not had one like this, sitting in a room for the time we will be doing so for the past 2 years, and you all know why. But it is really good to see you sitting in the room, here gathered together, so that we can have discourse together as we celebrate Shortwood's 137th anniversary. This is, yes, you can applaud, 137 years of stellar service to the world, Jamaica, and the global landscape. I greet you all, and I say it is good that you have come to join us this afternoon. We are gathered here today, as the chair said, to celebrate actually our 137th anniversary. However, we are doing so today as we look at cultivating a wholesome heart in our 32nd annual Founders Day lecture. Mrs. Norma Darlington, CD, past principal of Shortwood Teachers College, was a woman of great charm, formidable intellectual acuity, and spiritual fortitude. These qualities enabled her to make an invaluable contribution to education in Jamaica and the world over a 40-year period. In fact, for 41 years. As principal of Shortwood Teachers College, from 1989 to 2002, she initiated the annual Founders Day lecture, for which we now gather. She also initiated several other innovative programs at this college. Although she has left us for a better place where she does not have to worry about earthly things anymore, the contribution of Mrs. Darlington continues to impact beyond the classroom. She was instrumental in the founding of the Shortwood Foundation that has now been renewed, has a renewed drive to ensure that her legacy continues. The main objective of the Founders Day lecture is to provoke the participants to think critically and intellectually about current and relevant issues that directly or indirectly impact the education landscape. Over the last 31 years, we were blessed to engage with erudite speakers, including former prime ministers, university professors from Jamaica and abroad, leading practitioners from varying vocations, and our very own past students as they explored forward-thinking, diverse topics. Among these topics were elementary school teaching and the liberation of women, way back in 1992. Another topic was connecting the Mother Earth through the classroom, education and sustainable development in Jamaica. We also explored the topic learning smart. We were ahead of our time, enhancing education through technology, leadership and accountability, tertiary education, financing issues and the concerns of Jamaican students, and faith, education, and the information age, to name only a few of the topics that we have explored. Today we continue with the trend of stimulating and relevant topics, especially in light of the unprecedented last 2 years that we experienced in Jamaica and across the world. It is indeed good to be in the physical space again for this auspicious occasion. We are extremely delighted to have you all joining us from across the world on this occasion via our YouTube channel and in this physical space, the Marginalized Hall. A big thank you to the batch of 1972 for making this streaming possible with their donation towards the purchase of our newest kid on the block, our very old equipment for live streaming. We are today live streaming the lecture, and we will live stream our Thanksgiving service because we've been gifted this lovely piece of equipment. So let's cheer on the batch of 1972. So, sit back, relax, shift your intellects into overdrive, then into cruise control, while you actively engage with our guest presenters on the topic, cultivating a wholesome heart. Again, welcome to our 32nd Founders Day lecture.
Put your hands together better than that for Dr. Barnard. Thank you. I know that you're anxiously waiting to hear from our guest presenters this evening. And so, I don't want you to wait too long, so I'm now going to invite Dr. Bartley and Mr. Stephen Williams to do the introduction of our guest speakers.
paramount pleasure to introduce Dr. Neville Graham at this, the 32nd Annual Founders Day Lecture, named in honor of Mrs. Norma Darlington. Dr. Neville Graham, consultant, general vascular and laparoscopic surgeon, the founder and first dean of the Caribbean School of Medical Sciences, Jamaica, CSMSJ, the chairman and founder of the Winchester Surgical and Medical Institute, has been serving at several hospitals in Kingston and St. Andrews since 1996. He studied medicine at the University of Havana, Cuba. Following residency training, he practiced as a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons at the University of Glasgow and the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. Dr. Graham obtained a certificate in superior medical education from the University of Havana in 2012. As one of Jamaica's leading investigators in the areas of diabetes and ambulatory surgery, Dr. Graham's research findings have been critical contributions to the development of medicine. At the national level, Dr. Graham influences medical practice through membership in Ostomy Group of Jamaica, a body dedicated to patients and professionals who have colonoscopy or manage colonoscopy and other ostomies. In 2014, he was appointed a member of the National Commission for Science and Technology's Nutraceutical Industry Steering Committee. And in 2017, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information appointed him a board member of the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, JTEC. He is also chairman and president of the Health Investors and Educators Company Limited. Dr. Graham's expertise was extended through his work at the University of Technology, Jamaica, UTEC, from 2007 to 2013. He taught in the Sports Sciences program, conceptualized and wrote the curriculum for the Bachelor of Science degree with specialization in athletics training, sports management, and the art and science of coaching. Mentored junior faculty and also served in several administrative capacities. Dr. Graham is the recipient of several awards, including the Order of Distinction, Officer Class from the Government of Jamaica in 2013 for service to medicine. Distinguished Award for Contribution in Sports Education at the University of Technology, as well as the Clarendon College Distinguished Scholar for the Decade of the 70s Award. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Neville Graham.
I am pleased to introduce one of the speakers for this year's Norma Darlington Lecture. Hortense Brown is an educator with more than 30 years experience at all levels of educational system. She is also a counseling psychologist, having obtained a Master of Science degree in counseling psychology from the Northern Caribbean University. Currently, she is pursuing doctoral studies at the Northern Caribbean University, where she is the ELAP Graduate Scholar and will be attending Memorial University of New London very soon to take up this scholarship. Mrs. Brown is a senior lecturer with responsibility for staff training and development at Excelsior Community College. She occasionally lectures on a part-time basis at Northern Caribbean University. She serves her community as a Justice of the Peace for the parish of St. Catherine. An active member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Mrs. Brown served this faith community at the local and conference levels in several capacities. She is the inaugural president of the Portmore Federation of Adventist Youth. Current Family Life Director at Glenwood Park Seventh-day Adventist Church, where she has been a member for over 30 years. A member of the Family Life Advisory Council of Central Jamaica Conference and an executive member of the St. Catherine Lay Workers Federation and the St. Catherine Parish Development Action Committee. Mrs. Brown has been married to Royal for 30 years, and they are the parents of an adult daughter, Joelle. Ladies and gentlemen, may welcome our guest speakers, Miss Dr. Neville Graham and Mrs. Harkins Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm going to ask you to stand just for a few moments for me. Thank you. As we talk about heart health, I'm going to ask you to do a few exercises that will assist in making our hearts a little healthier. First, I'm going to ask you to extend your arms this way. Okay. Now that you have done that, use your right hand to pat this part of your left hand. Just 3 times. Then, change hands. And do the same. I'm told that that circulates the heart. And you know what has been said? That your mind is a powerful tool. So if you believe that your circulation has been improved, it has been improved. Then I'm going to ask you to just put your arms on your stomach and just do a little rub and do the rumba. I'm not seeing you doing it. Let's go. Good. And there you have it. You have activated your digestive system. Now release it. Thank you. Now that we have activated our digestive system and our circulatory system, if I see you nodding, I know you're agreeing with me, right? I am delighted to be associated with the 32nd Norma Darlington Founders Day Lecture Series. And I want to pause to acknowledge her widower, Mr. Darlington. Thank you for attending, sir. As a past teacher of St. Andrew High School, I am very familiar with the Darlington legacy. I am extremely proud to be associated with this lecture series. Interestingly, Mrs. Darlington was also associated with Excelsior Community College, where I am now employed. I was advised that the theme of this year's lecture series is Cultivating a Wholesome Heart. This is a very important topic, especially considering the astronomical cost of healthcare, most of which can be prevented through healthy relationships. Therefore, I have chosen to entitle my presentation, Merry Heart, Good Medicine. King Solomon, in Proverbs 17, verse 22, firmly establishes the link between body, mind, and soul. He states, a merry heart does good like medicine, but dries the bones. In other words, maintaining a pleasant disposition and good social relationships will assist an individual in living longer and maintaining good health. The converse is also true. If an individual is melancholy, abrasive, and has poor social relationships, he or she is more likely to suffer from poor health. Simply put, happy people live longer. Miranda and Kufari, 2021, in describing the heart and its functions, state, the heart is the central part of the circulatory system. The heart is responsible for pumping blood, supplying oxygen and nutrients, and removing metabolic waste, such as carbon dioxide from all the tissues in the body. And I'm sure that my learned doctor will establish that as well. The heart and the network of arteries and veins comprise the circulatory system. End of quote. Therefore, the heart is a very important member of the body, and especially because of its oxygen carrying capacity, the human being cannot survive without a functioning heart. So that when one describes anything as the heart of another, one is saying that it is the most vital part of that entity. However, in the context of the text quoted above, when one speaks of the heart, one is speaking of the center of emotion or the feeling part of the individual, and our teachers in training will know it as the affective part of the individual. I intend to utilize anecdotes and evidence from research to show that by energizing the heart through an attitude of gratitude, optimism, and forgiveness, an individual can actually live longer and be healthier. Mandashid and Kabul 2017 opined, quote, each one of us has a biological set point for happiness. However, just as we can influence our size through our nutrition and diet, we also can choose to influence our happiness set point. Further, our happiness is malleable, and there are things we can and should do to cultivate more happiness in our lives. End of quote. The magazine Happiness and Health out of Harvard University asserts a vast scientific literature has detailed how negative emotions harm the body. Serious sustained stress or fear can alter biological systems in a way that over time adds up to wear and tear, and eventually illnesses such as heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. Chronic anger and anxiety can disrupt cardiac function by changing the heart's electrical stability, hastening atherosclerosis, and increasing systemic inflammation. And since this is not my area of expertise, I'm going to leave it to the expert over there, and I'm going to focus on the emotional aspect of heart health. The literature is replete with evidence that psychological well-being and happiness are interrelated. et al. 2021 divide well-being into two perspectives, the eudaimonic and the hedonic. The eudaimonic school of thought examines happiness from the perspective of self-actualization and finding a purpose in life, while the hedonic views happiness as a state in which pleasure is paramount and pain is minimized. However, both perspectives view well-being as enjoying good health and being happy. UNESCO 2018 asserts, quote, the concept of psychological well-being refers to the pleasant emotions that people live in the long run to the satisfaction of life, or more generally, to the happiness of a person. This state is a fundamental indicator of mental health. Well-being is associated with a sense of autonomy, self-acceptance, and personal development, positive social relations, adaptive integration into the social environment, setting high valued life goals, etc. End of quote. This concept of well-being is positively correlated with gratitude, optimism, and forgiveness, among other things. Gratitude, as defined by Heman and Butcher 2020, is a state of mind in which one responds with positive feelings to expressions of altruism and experiences of worth. Alternatively, it is defined as the psychological reaction one has to receiving a benefit from others. Positive thinking is synonymous with optimism, which is defined by Truss et al. As the belief that one will encounter positive results, or the expectation of positive results. In most cases, an optimistic person is not indifferent to the environment around him or her, nor do they foolishly hold on to optimistic results. Forgiveness is defined as the process by which someone who has been harmed returns to pre-offense levels of love, compassion, and care toward an offender, or at least reduce negative thoughts, motivations, emotions, and behaviors toward an offender. It is important to note that forgiveness is not synonymous with reconciliation. Forgiveness means I am in a better place about the offender or the offense, so that I release all the bitterness, anger, and hurt associated with the offense. The first anecdote concerns a woman who presented for therapy after a year of moving from doctor to doctor with what appeared to be a heart problem. She presented with profuse sweating, shortness of breath, and excessive tiredness. And I'm sure that the doctor will tell you that those are all symptoms of heart disease. However, upon a thorough testing by multiple specialists, she was declared heart healthy. There were also no signs of lung disease. Finally, her general practitioner suggested that she tried to access therapeutic services from a psychologist. She was reluctant at first, but eventually relented. When she presented for therapy, she appeared older than her chronological age and at her wit's end. After several sessions, it was discovered that she was suffering from major guilt and depression from a failed relationship, which had alienated her from her children and extended family members. After reuniting with her family members and learning to count her blessings through an attitude of gratitude, she was a changed woman. She looked younger, was symptom-free, and happier. Deichert et al. 2021 suggests that while gratitude is not the only factor necessary for well-being, it is one factor that mediates many others to contribute to emotional health, low stress, and the absence of depression. Herman and Butu corroborate this point by suggesting that gratitude is one of the factors necessary for subjective well-being and happiness. The literature is replete with studies indicating that gratitude and well-being are positively correlated. For example, Marian et al. 2019, Jans Becken 2019, Nguyen and Gordon 2020. Similarly, optimism is correlated with happiness and well-being. Winston Churchill is quoted as saying, "The pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." Like gratitude, optimism is identified as, in the literature as positively correlated with good health and well-being. Sahai and Singh 2017 assert, I quote, "Optimism has several benefits in the area of physical and mental health, performance excellence, creativity, and success. People who are optimistic are able to put problems behind them and take a positive view of the future. Recent research have proven that optimism tends to improve immune system, prevent chronic disease, and help people cope with the mishappenings in their life. It has also been found that gratitude is related with optimism and that grateful people are happier, win more support, and are stress and depression free. Optimism has several benefits in the area of physical and mental health, performance excellence, creativity, and success. People who are optimistic are able to put problems behind them and take a positive view of the future. End of quote. Other researchers suggest that optimism improves social relationships, memory, overall health, and psychological well-being. And these include Troz et al. 2021, Ferret et al. 2019. The second anecdote is about a young man. We will call him John. John heard about the United States when he was a little boy, like most of us, thought that it was an exciting place to visit. From the time he heard of that place, he decided that he was not only just going to visit, he was going to become a citizen of this great place, the land of opportunity, as it was sold to him. This was exciting to him because he had no opportunity as a child. He was raised in less than ideal conditions. His mother was a single parent of many children, and he had never heard of his father. Things were rough, and he could not even dream of getting a visa.
But the eternal optimist, he was going to America. He was driven by this goal. He studied hard, did well in high school, but he did not get the opportunity to go to college. No problem. He was going to college in America. One day, John heard of the American Farm Work Program and he applied. This could be the major break, he thought. He was successful, and soon enough, he was off to America. And you know what they say, one entry visa. He was in the land of opportunity. While there, he realized that the farm work program was not the ideal that he longed for, so he kept searching for more. He met a young lady who was American, and she suggested that if they were married, he could become an American. Here was John's golden opportunity. Before you know it, John was married and he was going to be an American. Dreams don't always come true, do they? John's marriage was a disaster. Rather than helping him to assist his relatives in Jamaica, his wife discouraged it, and she constantly reminded him that were it not for her, he would not be in America. If John was anything, he was smart. He researched about the process of naturalization, and he set his plan in motion to become an American citizen. The day came when John became an American citizen. Having secured his citizenship, John set about leaving his wife. He eventually left her, went to college, filed for his mother, and started living the American dream. You may say John was opportunistic. I say John was optimistic. He may have been opportunistic, but he was optimistic, and optimism kept him going in the difficult times and secured him his American dream. If John were forgiving, he would have forgiven his wife, and they might have lived happily ever after. Who knows? However, we do know that forgiveness is an essential component in sustained psychological well-being and overall longevity. Kane et al. 2020 states, empirical research provides evidence that trait forgiveness and gratitude may buffer against symptoms of depression and anxiety, promote optimism and hope, and increase self-esteem and life satisfaction. This is corroborated by Major et al. 2020, and I quote, in addition, forgiveness has been shown to predict health outcomes such as lower depression, anxiety and substance abuse, and higher life satisfaction and well-being. This indicates that those who tend to forgive might have a better overall well-being than those who do not. However, Juska and Abianca 2022 warn, I quote, while forgiveness definitely contributes to well-being, this relationship is mediated by other factors such as the victim's prior relationship with the transgressor, perceived transgression painfulness, the transgressor's apologies, and efforts to make amends. Like gratitude and optimism, there is overwhelming evidence in the literature to support the fact that forgiveness contributes significantly to well-being. Van der Waal et al. 2019 suggests the scientific literature on interpersonal forgiveness suggests that forgiveness may be one of the keys to understanding how people maintain close bonds. The same sentiments are expressed by Wallace et al. 2016, Singh and Sharma 2018, and I could go on and on. except that my time is limited. So, in lieu of an anecdote, I want you to do a little bit of reflection. Think about it. You are a sibling, a parent, a co-worker, a teacher, a student, a patient, a nurse, a doctor, a spouse. You may even fit into one or more of these roles. Sorry, more than one of these roles. The point is, you have a relationship with another human being. Where there is a relationship, there may be hurt and ill will and pain and bitterness. I want you now to think about one person who needs your forgiveness, or one person whom you may have hurt. Have you thought about him or her? Write that name down on a piece of paper. And when you leave here, like a good teacher, I'm giving you a bit of homework. You are going to write about that incident that caused you that hurt or pain. And you are going to make the conscious decision to forgive that person. You are going to write why you are going to forgive that person. And don't forget to forgive yourself. Let's go of the pain, the hurt, the bitterness, and forgive freely. You're adding 10 more years to your life and reducing pain and heartache and depression. Someone once said that unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Let's go now and forgive. Be happy. Finally, a word from Mandashid and Kobu 2017. I quote, "Happiness has a direct effect upon the heart. Greater happiness relates to a lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, and greater regularity in heartbeats. Astonishingly, a 10-year Canadian study found each 1-point increase in positive emotions caused heart disease risk to decrease by as much as 22%. Happiness also has a range of other health effects. It can protect us against disease and disability, including short-term aches and pains, chronic pains, longer-term diseases such as cancer, and even disabilities such as frailty in older persons. These effects are likely because happiness can boost our immune system. Happiness also can help protect us against the effects of stress by more quickly lowering the levels of harmful stress hormones such as cortisol and other stress-related blood factors known to be associated with a greater risk of heart disease. Our happiness can improve our well-being." End of quote. Do you want to live longer? Be grateful, be optimistic, and forgive often. A merry heart indeed is good medicine. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Good evening, everyone. A merry heart can induce happiness and assist in your immune system as well, and encourage your heart to function better. Certainly, Mrs. Brown. Now, I'd like to acknowledge the principal, Mrs. Barrett Marge, I'd like to also acknowledge Mr. Stevens. How are you, sir? Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Steve, the board. Oh, is that, you haven't come? Okay, yes, all right. And I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Darlington as well, the widow of our lecture series, and certainly the Cuban ambassador. It's always a pleasure to see you, Ambassador, and to recognize your continued presence, especially in fora like these. Now, it's also important that I acknowledge the audience, those online, and especially post-COVID, to see so many people in a room and they are not social distancing. But at the same time, you know, I see the middle here a little empty. But I'd like to say this is good news. It is important that this lecture that speaks about cultivating a wholesome heart is key to understand the functions, the anatomy and the functions of the heart, and to understand when the heart is diseased. So it's very important to know that. And I'd like to also recognize the fact that stress is a very big factor. And Mrs. Brown spoke so much about stress. I can't see the screen, so that's fine as well. But when we go on to some other things, we'll talk about that. It is important that we know some undisputed facts about the heart. Now, sometimes people use some colloquial language. You have a heart of a lion, but the lion lives for 15 years. You have a dog's heart. And we all know what that means as well, you know? And they say you have a heart of an angel. I suspect the angel would have lived much longer. Now, in our understanding, I'd like to tell you, though, from a scientific point of view, that that animal in the animal kingdom that has the best constructed heart is the crocodile. And the crocodile will normally live for 100 to 140 years. However, another animal that animal's heart is not as efficient as the crocodile is the turtle. And that turtle lives up to 400 years. It's slower, and we have found that there are animals in the depth of the ocean that live even longer. So we have a problem here. The genetics have a real problem, and we have to look at science as well. And this is where we're gonna go. And should I change the slide? That's the heart. That's the human heart. Let me get it right. Okay? And we must always, well, I don't know if my pointer is ready to understand this. So therefore, My voice was big enough, you know? All right, so here is it. Okay, back. Yes, here is the heart. It has 4 chambers, 2 ventricles, and 2 auricles. It receives blood from the inferior and superior vena cava. This blood goes into the right ventricle, goes to the lung, create the pulmonary circulation, gets its oxygen, and then it continues with the aorta to the brain, to the rest of the body through that right ventricle. The heart has its own circulation, and this is where some things happen when the heart is not wholesome, especially the coronary arteries here. And that is the cardiac muscle that is completely different from all other muscles in the body. So, understanding that will tell you that the heart is very special. So, where is this? Okay. Let me see if I can use. I have 2 mics. And I'll borrow that again. But it is important to note that the human heart is in the center of the cardiovascular system. It is quintessential in life of all human beings and all vertebrates. It is the main organ that pumps oxygen and the nutrients through the blood and the blood vessels to all systems and organs of the body. The heart receives its oxygenated blood from the lungs and receive deoxygenated blood from the tissues. And I'd like to give a little video how this video will work. You can let it work. Just to give you a little understanding of what is happening at this moment in your chest. Can be started from my side. Okay. A little complicated, you know. But we want it because start work. So you have the heart. That's the right side that has received the blood. Then it goes to the lungs through the right ventricle, to the right auricle, then the right ventricle, and it then gets oxygenated, goes through the left ventricle, then continue to the aorta and goes up. So that's the right atrium, gets the blood, right ventricle, goes to the lungs, pulmonary arteries, take it to the blood, get oxygenated here, and goes right around and to the left ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle, and the aorta, and then to the rest of the body. It is therefore important that we understand what our heart does. It continues to pump blood. case I need it again. Now, some factors about the heart. The heart pumps blood at a rate of 72 beats per minute in the normal person. It pumps blood through the system, and at 35 million pumps per year. It also works with 29 billion pumps if you live, or 2.9 billion pumps if you live for 85 years. And the normal human being would have lived to 70 years, 210, and now it is being extended. So therefore, it is important to say that if you want to live longer, you got to take care of your heart. And certainly, it starts from day one. At 1 year, a young human being would have had a fatty streak in their arteries. And that means that that human being starts to have atherosclerosis. So, you look at it at 1 year. Now, if it means then that you have a genetic factor that your heart will beat for 2.9 billion times before it peters out, the average human being would have lived between 70 and 85 years. No matter what, it depends on the quality of life as well. Now, in modern society, we must understand that life is a factor, and your cardiovascular system is as such that you will die from a heart attack or a heart disease in 35% of the time. Then stroke. And I think I could come there, but let me say some things that are so important in the whole thing. 30% of the time from, 35% from myocardial infarction, 30% from stroke, about 25% from oncology disease, cancer, and the other 10% from other diseases. So the heart occupies an important position that 35% of all human beings will die from the heart and the cardiovascular system. And therefore, when you add stroke, which is part of the cardiovascular system, you understand then that 70% of the time. Therefore, importantly, the heart attack, or the myocardial infarction, the heart failure, cardiac arrhythmias, valvular heart disease, congenital heart failure, cardiac infections, especially in young persons who have a problem with things like rheumatic fever and so on can have heart infections as well. So I would have to make a make a little intervention on this matter. So you have myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack, heart failure, cardiac arrhythmias, valvular heart disease, congenital heart failure, and cardiac infections. And here it is, your heart this is your actual coronaries, and the red one here is going to have a problem. And then this is where the blood clots affect the rest of the cardiac muscle, and then you have a heart attack. And about 20% of the persons who have a heart attack die immediately. The other 80 may reach hospital, and then about another 30% die in hospital. So in the future now, what medicine is doing is try to reduce that by medical interventions. However, even with that, you can take care of your heart. You can cultivate a wholesome heart by looking at what are the predisposing factors: age, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes mellitus, obesity, stress. And Mrs. Brown will come back to the question of stress. That mental factor is very important. Diabetes, alcohol, smoking, illegal drugs, and pollution. Pollution becomes something that is very important in modern times. So creating a wholesome heart is very important. In more than 10, as I had said before, 80 to 100, 85 to 100 years and more by reducing those predisposing factors. And let me tell you something about predisposing factors. One of the biggest problems with heart disease is hypertension. And if you are stressed, if you have family issues, if you have personal issues, if you have histories with the community and so on, then your heart is going to get into a mode, because your central nervous system will send messages to the heart that are sometimes very different. And therefore what will happen, stress will increase your heart rate without increase in your oxygen capacity, and increase your metabolic abnormalities, your immune system, your cholesterol level, and therefore your arteries will get blocked, and you will now is more prone to heart disease. So importantly, the predisposing factors are going to be very important. So we talk about age as a factor because that's a genetic factor. As you get older, all your organs will continue to fail. As one grows older, proper diet, exercise, lifestyle reduces those predisposing factors. And it is recommended that the normal adult human being do 10,000 steps per day at least to keep the cardiovascular system working properly. Sleep is important. 6 to 8 hours a day is required for the adult life. It allows the neural and the muscles, which include cardiac muscles, to improve, and the rest of the brain and other organs, including the digestive system, will have an opportunity to recuperate. So sleep is very important for your blood pressure, for your well-being, and a normal BMI, body mass index, which is your weight, your frame, and we look at that as the index, your height, and say 20 is ideal. But the medical people will say 18 to 30. When you're going over 30, 35, and so on, and you're obese, then the heart has to work harder. And the truth is, you can get a heart attack. So the more fruits and vegetables, the less red meat, carbohydrates and fats should be less, and the more vitamins to increase your immune system. The truth is that diet and nutrition play a very important role in ensuring a healthy, wholesome heart. So I'm giving you these facts to tell you that diet becomes a very important factor, and older persons who are more obese are more often and more predisposed to just walk and drop. And you say, well, we didn't know, they didn't have any illness and so on. But what happens is that the heart fails suddenly because the blood vessels, the coronaries, block suddenly. And it can happen to normal, healthy persons as well. Because if you have a disease of hypercholesteremia, then also you can have too much fat in your cardiovascular system, and they block your coronaries as well. So it is important that diet and exercise and good lifestyle, 3 things, helps the heart to maintain its function longer, increases life expectancy, and therefore allow for quality life. Because that's important. If your heart keep on beating and you are bedridden and you're on all of that, you might live a little longer, but it affects you. Importantly, it affects quality. Now, I must say that even Alzheimer's, the heart has affected that. So people with myocardial infarction, people with congestive heart failure, people with heart disease, valvular heart disease, they are more prone to Alzheimer's and senility because the amount of blood that the heart can pump to the brain is limited. And so brain blood infusion is very important in maintaining your heart. You know, while this was being typed, the person put minors. Well, minors who live early, who live a shorter life, a lot of times because they have heart disease. But minors now, they live shorter lives as most individuals because of dust and pollution in the mines. You know? Cooks in the polluted kitchen, the smoker, they always have a heart disease that affects the people most. So what I could say about the coming years, that the generations that are coming up must look at pollution, fight harder for a better world, less polluted, less heat, and less, that will affect human survival. So it's very important for us to know now that the fight is to maintain the environment, reduce the risk of heart disease and other diseases. So, I'll take a little time out and indulge in the stress part. You know, individuals, stress is a big factor. Reduction of heart disease and especially blood pressure and the diabetes. One of the things that I have found out in my practice is that many people with diabetes and hypertension are having problems because we can't put them to sleep. Because if you put them to sleep, they have a reduction in their cardiac delivery, and therefore they can have serious problems. Diabetes as a metabolic disease reduces your ability to adapt, reduces the heart's ability to adapt, and thus you have about 40% of individuals over 60 who are diabetic. 50% in Jamaica of individuals who are over 50 have hypertension. The two biggest important predisposing factor for heart disease. So stress increases your heart. Again, and these are physical stress and of course emotional stress has affected it. Depression reduces your cardiac muscle circulation, send the wrong signal to your central nervous system, thus allowing malfunctioning of the heart and create arrhythmias and heart attacks. But listen to this. Stress is a major factor, and atrial fibrillation is a factor that stress affects. So cardiac arrhythmias are a major factor. So what happens, because you are stressed, what happens to you is that you find your heart start to beat out of control. Sometimes because you are stressed, even though you may be depressed with that, you know, your heart beat out of control again. And that affects your cardiac circulation. And you know what? It can send off clots to your brain and your feet, but especially your brain, and you get a stroke as well. So although we divide myocardial infarction from stroke, the big thing is that they are so related that they cause more than 70% of the causes of death. Finally, a bad heart influences negatively all the factors that affect negatively and affects other organs, creating a vicious circle and increases mortality and reduces life expectancy. That is important because when you have your stress factor and it is a serious problems with your heart, then the heart itself negatively influences the other organs, the other comorbidity and therefore reduces the ability of the heart and the other organs to deal with the fact that you can maintain life. So the mortality and your life expectancy goes down with heart disease. It is therefore important, and let me say it again, 3 big factors: diet, nutrition, lifestyle are the big factors in reducing your cardiac problems, increases your ability to have a wholesome heart for a longer time. So although both did so well in 2008, let's see what happens beyond that. Let's see what we take from this evening to say, listen, diet, exercise, lifestyle, very, very important. Reduction of stress, reduce other comorbidities like hypertension and diabetes mellitus and other conditions, so that your heart can continue to beat for more than 10 and beyond, and you have not only a longer life but a healthier life as well, by ensuring that your heart maintains a good quality and is free from most of the diseases. I'd like to thank you, and I hope we take a lot from this lecture.
I am sure as we listen to the guest speakers, we were in reflective mode as we think of cultivating a wholesome heart. Mrs. Brown mentioned that the mind is a powerful tool. A merry heart is good medicine. A broken spirit dries the bone. Happy people live longer. Happiness is malleable, and we are responsible for creating our own happiness. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the next person to die. Powerful words. As we listen to Dr. Graham, he explained the function of the heart. We were reminded that 72 beats per minute in a normal human being. 2.9 billion pumps if we should live between the ages of 70 and 85 years. One of the biggest contributors to heart disease is hypertension. Therefore, we have to make sure that we are not stressed, and if we are stressed, we have to monitor our stress. Before we move to the question and answer segment, we are delighted to have in our presence the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mrs. Harrison, one of our past students. And so the teachers in training, you should be motivated, knowing that the current president of the Jamaica Teachers Association got her training right here at Shortwood Teachers College. As we move in the question and answer segment, we now invite Mrs. Ava Marie Francis Reed to be the facilitator.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It is really a pleasure and an honor to have you. President, my super senior, Mrs. Harrison, good to see you also. Now, though the presentations were polar in nature, one was from the scientific perspective and the other was from the affective, they converged at a point, and it was on the matter of how we reduce stress, the harmful effects of stress. Now, the fan is stressing me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to come to the front, come to the middle right there, and just pose your questions, and our guests will be more than happy to answer them. Please, the microphone is right there in the middle of the aisle. We're asking you to come forward with any question. If you want to ask it, in anonymity, you can write it. Yes. All right. Now, may I just ask the two persons who gave me questions before I came permission to ask. The first one. This one was asked, and it is preferred not to, the person would prefer not to be mentioned. How do you protect your heart's wholesomeness in a toxic environment?
I'm assuming by toxic that the individual means that there's bad blood or bad relationships. And I think forgiveness plays a major role in that, in the sense that most of the problems that exist in a relationship exist because of our perception of what the individual has done or has said. So if we could take the time out to look at things from the other person's perspective, most of the time some of the anger and malice and so on would disappear.
Thank you. Dr. Graham, the question is asked, if we come from a family with heart disease, how soon should we start getting checked out by a medical professional?
Well, if you have the predisposing factors before, like hypertension, obesity, early diabetes, it would be important that you start from very early in childhood. However, most chronic disease processes start at 40 from the normal individual. So if you have the genetic predisposition to have heart disease, you got to have to start between 25 and 30. And we have seen many conditions start to emerge at that time, including breast cancer. I just operated on a 25-year-old teacher with breast cancer, and if we didn't catch it early, it would have advanced even quicker. So when you have a predisposition to heart disease, it's usually very important that you start between 25 and 30 years to start check out yourself. But if you have noticed you have hypertension, you have been to the doctor, and you notice that you may have diabetes mellitus, and you notice that you may have hyperlipidemia, which is hypercholesteremia, that can block the arteries, it's better to start early.
Thank you. Now it's either one of two things. One, we want to leave early, and so we'd rather just move on with the question and answer, or we were very, very clear. The presentations were very clear. So it's one of the two. Yes, we have a question on this side.
It's evening now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to our presenters for your much thoughtful and enlightening presentations. Perhaps the question is for Dr. Graham. Sir, is there any scientific evidence to suggest that some of what is manifested as heart disease and challenge originated out of persons who habitually are unforgiving and are bitter and have much malice and anger and rage in their what we can't see spiritual heart, and it is manifested? Is that is there evidence in the medical field to suggest that what is manifested physically is coming out of or living as human beings?
I suspect that the psychologists will do some work on this question as well. But I'd like to tell you, President, that we have yet to understand so much the nexus between the brain and the heart. What we know is that the heart is innervated by the central nervous system branches in the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So therefore, you find then that you might not consciously recognize the big factor of stress. But the more we look at it, the more we understand that a very stressful person, a person with a lot of anger, sends different messages through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system to the cardiac muscles, and therefore they function abnormally to the arteries in your body, because your adrenaline drive goes up when you are very angry. But at the same time, your pulmonary function is not going up, so your oxygenation is not good, and therefore you create toxic metabolites that are transferred all over the body as well. And therefore, in that respect, you are more prone to every single thing. Heart disease, you're prone to gastrointestinal problems, you're prone to liver problems, renal problems, and you have an increase in cancer because you have a reduced immune system. So you find that your endocrine system becomes messed up as well, and that is directly related to your cardiac function, to your blood clotting easily, and that affects your mortality, your life expectancy, and affects your lifestyle too. It also increases you get tired very easily. So you don't go and exercise, and you don't eat properly either. And it is because of these factors that anger, stressful situations increases your heart disease and therefore affects negatively your cardiac function. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. Are there any other questions? All right. Now, just one final thing, and I'm sure we all are interested in knowing this. There have been many reports of suicide, and from time to time, based on what we've heard, you would think it's someone who is sad or someone who is normally depressed. But I've been to quite a few suicide prevention seminars, and it's usually the person who is happy, gleeful, the person who is bubbly. And so family members at times are wondering, what happened? We didn't see this coming. And so happiness, what really is a state of happiness? Because it's clearly not just the ability to be this. It's clearly deeper than that. So you did mention being happy, maintaining an energy of happiness. But if you could just speak to us briefly, and then we conclude here on what really is happiness. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, there's an element of pleasantness in happiness. But research has also shown that persons mask their hurt and pain behind a wide smile. However, when you go to these workshops, you will find that yes, the person is happy and seemingly spirited, but if you listen to the persons associated with them, you will learn that they may be giving away things, just being very generous, or that they voice in some way, shape, or form that they are tired of what is going on with them, or they want to kill themselves. And by the way, as we broach the subject, if anybody, even in passing, even as a joke, say to you that I'm tired of living or I feel like killing myself, don't take it lightly. Because most of the times, persons say these things and we just say, sure, them just joking or whatever, because as you have said, they seem to be happy and so on. But happiness takes more than just the appearance of being pleasant. It is a whole spectrum of things, including a sense of contentment, a sense of well-being in terms of good relationships, good social relationships, having a sense of support, a feeling of security, and all of those things. So happiness, while it is associated with pleasantness, is not only being pleasant.
I'd like to add something here. So your personality can be one of a jovial personality. That may be genetic, Then you have, in psychiatric terms, where we call it projection. So deep down, you are really sad. So you go to bed sad, you wake up sad, but you project a different personality outside when you meet people. You have severe contradictions. Sometimes it's personal, sometimes it is environmental, including your relationships. But you internalize that and project the thought of happiness. Another thing that can happen is suddenly an emergency, and you can't deal with it right away, so you go on to suicidal concept. So the human being has a variety of ways to really sought for solutions, and one of the most devastating solutions is actually suicidal. Now, I must say that statistically in Jamaica, suicidal rate is not as high as in the Middle East, in Asia, and in Latin America. The Caribbean people don't kill themselves as much. They kill each other. And it becomes a very important factor now because of the murder rate. So people look at other people and accuse them of them not being happy or try to acquire things from them for them to be happy. And they can project a feeling of happiness when they hurt other people as well. And therefore, but the internal conflict is there, and they sometimes become suicidal.
Thank you so very much. Thought-provoking and truly engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for our guests.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ava-Marie Francis Reed. We'll now at this time invite Miss Cassandra White, a Year 3 student, to make a presentation to our guest presenters. I invite the guest presenters to step forward, please. Can just come forward.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. So I want to say thank you. Oh, okay. All right, I go first. So, good evening, Mrs. Hortense Brown. I want to say thank you for being here today, and on behalf of the Charteau Teachers College family, I would like to give you this little token for sharing us today about the emotional aspect of a good heart health. So thank you. You're welcome. Hello. Good evening. I want to say thank you for being here as well, and I want to give you this little token of our appreciation of being here to share with us about the scientific aspect of a good heart health, and it was a pleasure to have you. Can you hold this one, please?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Charteau Teachers College. And I think that this is an excellent way to recognize such a stalwart in your history. So, Mr. Darlington, we are thankful for you to have loaned us your wife over that period, to have done so much for the college.
Thank you. As we get closer to the end, this function could not be possible without you. I would like to say a special thank you to our principal acting, Dr. Bert Marge, our vice principals, Dr. Cook and Dr. Bartley, our guest presenters, Dr. Neville Graham and Mrs. Hortense Brown, Miss Andrea Nelson, Mr. Calvin Mitchell, Mr. Stephen Williams, Mrs. Ava-Marie Francis Reed, persons who joined us online, and those who joined us physically. Thank you all for making this lecture another successful one. William Clinton said, "Together, people with good hearts and fine minds can move the world." And I will repeat, William Clinton said, "Together, people with good hearts and fine minds can move the world. I now invite you to stand for the singing of the national anthem. Thank you for wonderful singing. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending.